right, awesome. So the objectives for today or for this session are going to be naming the difference between installing and upgrading an operating system, describing the differences between an attended and unattended installation, naming the key steps to install Windows, including the different ways to begin the process, identifying common pitfalls that can occur when installing Windows and how to solve them. Compare and contrast the upgrade requirements of Windows 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. Okay. Our key BSMs to keep in mind are communication. We keep seeing this pop up a lot, but as you guys know, communication is key. You need to be able to talk to your clients, to your coworkers, to your superiors, team members. So it's always important being able to have strong communication skills in our work environment. And then the mindset that we want to embody is persistence. We want to be able to chip away at our large tasks. If you have to install 1,000 images, you know, it's a big task, and you just need to have the persistence to be able to see it through and have a procedure in how to do it. Okay. All right, so let's get started with identifying an installation versus an upgrade, okay? So an installation is when you're putting the operating system in for the first time. An upgrade is you have an operating system in there already and you're upgrading it to a newer version. Sometimes it might be you might be going from 8 to 10, or you might be going from 10 to 11, right? That's an upgrade. But an installation is there's nothing on there, or you've formatted the drive and you're installing a clean version, brand new. Might not be, sorry, I shouldn't say brand new. It's just a clean version. Like there's no other operating system on there. All right. Okay, so here says upgrading to a different version or addition if needed. A clean install is that there's no operating system present. A repair installation, we use that to resolve issues. Okay, and then we got multi or dual boot. Who could? Does anyone know what that means? Multi or dual boot?
It's like a boot camp for Macs, where you can like load a bunch of different things at once, different operating systems.
Exactly. All right, and then we have remote network installations. This is where we do our installations over the network. So if those are used a lot in, you know, corporate environments, if you know that you have to upgrade from 10 to 11, and you have 1,000 computers, you'll start rolling out network installations. You might not do all of them at the same time, right? Because you probably want to section them off, but you might do 100 a week or something like that, and do your your installations that way over your network. Do we have any questions about this right now here, guys?
Yeah, I think they mentioned when you do a multi or dual boot, it's better to put the second operating system on a drive, right? Or like a flash drive or something like that.
No, you don't need to have it on a flash drive. You might want it exactly right on your drive. You still do need to partition a different part of your drive for it, but it doesn't have to be on a flash drive.
Oh, okay.
We'll talk about installing from flash drives in a second.
Did we go over cloning in this one or no?
Okay, do we go over what?
Cloning.
Cloning? What do you mean cloning?
You talking about images? Basically creating an image that you can duplicate over and over again? Yeah, they briefly mentioned that that'd be part of the unattended install.
Yeah.
Setting up the answer file and all that stuff for the different types of installs you'll do for your organization.
Yeah, we will go over that. Did you have a question, Amiha?
What we call it when we go up from Windows 11 to 10, is it still upgrade or lower grade?
Okay, if you're rolling back, if you're going backwards, you're rolling back. So you're
downgrading.
Downgrade. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and usually it's very rare where you would do that unless like you're having issues. But yeah, let's say that you had Windows 10, you upgraded to Windows 11, and it's buggy for some reason, and you want to go back to Windows 10. We call that rolling back. Okay. All right, so now we're going over types of installations. So attended means that we're physically paying attention to the installation process, and we're answering the questions as prompted. Have you guys everyone raise your hand if you ever installed Windows or upgraded Windows? Yeah, give me your digital hands raised so I can get a. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, for those of you guys who haven't, guess what? There's a test I'll have for it. So you'll be able to see what it's like. But if you remember from installing, it'll ask you things like, what's your time zone? What network are you using? There's a bunch of questions that the process asks you, and when you're actually doing those one by one, that's called attendant. Like you're there, walking through that whole installation. And then unattended pretty much means that you're not answering those questions one by one. You're either setting up an image where you want an image. An image is like the configurations. So you configure the OS beforehand, and then as it's being installed, because you already configured all those options, they'll be selected for you automatically. So you don't have to physically be paying attention to it. And then there's two different ways to do that. There's through bootable media. So it could be like a flash card or a disk, right? And then there's system prep. So when you're using system prep, the system image is created and it creates a duplicate of the other system. And this could be installed over a network. So you can install multiple images to different PCs to where they need to go. But basically, once you do that, all of them are going to be the same, right? Because you're installing those images based off one. So if you're doing 100 of them, they're all going to be identical. Okay, and then we have RIS, which is remote install, and this allows for several network installations at once. Okay, then down at the bottom we have a little chart that tells you the method and whether it can be a clean installation or if you can do it for an upgrade. Okay, so there it says an unintended install, you can do a clean installation, you can upgrade. For bootable media, you can do a clean installation, but you can't upgrade. For system prep, you can do a clean install, but you cannot upgrade. And for a remote install, you can do clean installations, but not upgrades as well. So this might be a good slide to take a screenshot of or to note in your notes. Do you have any questions about this?
So the install you do normally with Windows, like where it shows you the pop-ups and it says, hey, pick this or that, that's a attended one?
That is correct. Who was that, George?
Me, yeah, George. I said me. Yeah, George.
All right, awesome. Yeah. Eric, Henry, and Donald, do you guys have questions or your hand is still hanging out? Okay. All right. Okay, so
what does an unattended install look like? Is it just through the terminal?
So it might be through the terminal, yes. There are things like that we do through the terminal. It also could be from your bootable media. Like you might have a drive and all you do is you go in and you plug it in, right? And then once it starts, you walk away from it. You know what I mean? You don't have to be physically there.
I've done it like that one time before. Okay.
You have. Okay. So yeah. Right. So
what did you say an image was?
An image is a copy of the settings that you're gonna load into that operating system.
Okay.
Right. That's what we call the image. Yeah. Any other questions here, guys? All right. Feel free to ask, please. All right. So this is a big part of unintended installations. Kelly's a little bit more knowledgeable about this than I am, but there's an answer file, and basically what this answer file does is all those questions that you're asked throughout the installation process, they get stored in this answer file. So, Francis, I think you called it cloning, right? Was that the term that you used? So this is kind of what we were alluding to. Like, so you answer all your questions in this for that image, right? And then the image is cloned through all
I
to all
call
the
it
other.
different things.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said this is why I'm here, because I call it different things. I don't have the official technological term.
Hey, but you know what you're talking about. It's all good. It's all good. So yeah, so this answer file holds the answers to all those prompts, right? So when you're deploying the image, it'll go search for the answer file, and basically it'll get all its information off of that. And this is what it looks like here. This is a screenshot of it.
So, a couple quick things about images, if you don't mind, David.
Yeah, please.
Like, the image file can be on a server, like a Pixie server, or it can be on a USB stick. So you can have it set up however you want. Now, when you're setting up employees, every time a new employee comes on, especially if you're dealing with a mid to large size business, you don't want to go in and set up a unique setup for every single employee, because you may miss things that they're supposed to have, and you may give them access to things that they shouldn't have. So what you'll do is you'll create images for different types of employees, or group policies, but the images will be set up so that everybody who comes in, if they're in operations, they all get the same image and they have everything they need to get started. If they come in and they're going to work in accounting, they get a different setup, a different set of authorizations that they're allowed to use. If they're in sales, if they're in R&D, if they're a manager, if they're an executive, you may have a multitude of images that you will use throughout your organization, depending on what's called the principle of least privilege, where they have enough to do their job, but nothing more. So that is why you would set up these types of images. And every time new updates and stuff like that come out, you need to go and update your images. And then when you do deployments, it makes things go a lot faster. If you have to deploy an image to 50 computers, it's good to just push it out from the Pixie server rather than go to each individual computer, set them all up, and make sure that all this, the policies are the same and all that fun stuff. So you're wondering, man, that sounds complicated. Is there any way we can go to practice this? Absolutely. There's a test out lab.
I have a question about that. Couldn't you also, create a file segment those employees and forward what they needed? Would that be an alternative too? Because that would be simpler as well, wouldn't it?
Is there any way you can type that, because your audio is lagging really bad? Hank, and I'm having a hard time hearing you, sir. I apologize.
I think he's asking if there was a way for you to remote install through having a file that was there.
Yeah, that's where you would push it from a Pixie server. You would push.
No, but he wants to specifically upgrade it as well.
Yes, you would push an upgraded. You could push an upgraded image through as well. Is that what you're asking? I'm not sure.
Would you be able to upgrade it after the first install?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, because you're just pushing an updated image. And as you're not doing it as a clean install, it wouldn't disrupt the files and applications already installed by the employee. So did you have a question for David?
Yes, so I think I tried to upgrade or something Windows, but it requests this image. So did I copy this image from somewhere, or I build it by myself? For example, I use for my personal use, but it consistently asks for me just a copy image or something like this. So where I get the image?
No, so if it's asking you to copy, it's probably asking you to back up for a backup in case before you upgrade, right, Kelly? If it's asking
typically, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, where the image would come from typically that is something you would build.
Okay.
And it's not as complicated as you think. So, but it would be an image that you would create yourself, and you can do one for your personal use. I knew a guy from our class, like the class I was in, had literally like a folder, like a little zip up case with a whole bunch of USBs that were just a tons of different images that he used, depending on, because he had like a computer lab basically set up at his house, and he loved to tinker with computers. So depending on what kind of images he was going to be working with, he could deploy them really quickly, and they would set up automatically. So you can do them for yourself. They're not overly complicated to set up, but you don't have to have one either. You can do just a generic setup and then answer the questions yourself as well.
All right, thank you.
All right, awesome. Final checklist for minimum install requirements. So you should have a final checklist before beginning installation, including to make sure that you have the minimum hardware levels for the system requirements. And so we're going to talk about those in the next 3 slides for Windows 7, 8.1, and Windows 10. Are they not asking about Windows 11 yet, Kelly? You're muted. You're muted.
I'm not answering it again. No, we went over it a little bit yesterday, but we will see that slide again today when we go over Windows configurations for minimum setup or minimum requirements. Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so yes, you guys got introduced yesterday to the minimums for Windows 7, 8.1, and for 10. This is for 10 here. So your processor needs a minimum of 1 gigahertz. You need 1 gigabyte of memory for the 32-bit and 2 for 64-bit. You need 16 gigabytes of free hard drive space in your 32 gigabit installation, 20 for the 64-bit. So you need a DVD-ROM. That's not 100% true. You need DirectX, right? You need to have that. You need a mouse, keyboard, and you need some internet access. All right. You guys remember what stayed the same?
Well, you can
skip this.
We didn't go over 7, 8, and 8.1, so there's no.
Oh, you didn't go over it yesterday?
No, because you don't need it. You don't need
Oh.
7, 8, and 8.1.
Oh, okay.
So you can skip that part. So I'll remove that slide.
What was the answer though?
But basically what happens is your processor stays the same. So you need a 1 gigahertz processor. And then for a 32-bit architecture, it was what? It was 2 gigs of RAM and was it 16 gigs of hard drive space? And then for 64-bit architecture, it was a 1 gigahertz processor, minimum of, is it 4 gigs of RAM?
Yeah, 4.
And then 20 gigs of hard drive space. So those 3 things stay the same, and it's specific to 32-bit architecture versus 62-bit architecture. Although I think Windows 10 has started phasing out the 32-bit, and there's only 64 in 11, if I remember correctly.
Wait, I thought it was 2 gigabytes of RAM for 64 bits.
So it's 1 for 32 and 2 for 64. Yeah. 4 is the maximum for 32. That's where my problem was.
Yes. Yeah, it's 2 gigabyte minimum.
Yeah. There you
go. All right. So these are the boot methods for your installation or upgrades. Boot means where the system is getting the operating system from, right? So you can have it in a DVD, right? You can have it in your USB or your flash drive. CD-ROMs, these used to come before the DVD. And then when you're doing your server installations, you do PXE or your pre-boot execution environment. And this is used in conjunction with deployment from a server, so a PXE server, and is used for unattended installations. When using, it usually loads the Windows pre-installation environment, which stores the OS in RAM and then installs the image onto the hard drive. So you do need to know about PXE, and there sometimes are questions about the pre-installation environment. So it's good to remember that these two go hand in hand.
Yes,
right.
Francis.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand up, Francis. Go ahead.
the previous slide, was that PXE, is that the one where you can boot from the Ethernet off of the server? Is that
From
what
your
you're
server,
talking
right?
about?
So yes.
Okay, all right.
So yeah,
That's where you can store images and push them out to other machines if you need to,
Yeah.
or if you're working on a machine, go get one and pull it down.
Yeah, so basically you're doing this over your network, yes.
So
okay, NetBoot. So this was developed by Apple, and it allows a device to boot from a network location. And it's used. We haven't talked about DHCP, but it uses DHCP to receive the data, the configuration data, and it works very similar to your Windows deployment services. Okay, so think about NetBoot as being Apple's version to being able to install Mac iOS over your network. Then we got external hot swappable drives, and these are similar to your USB or CD or DVD drives, and they're external, and they contain the system installation files for the installation. And because they're hot swappable, you don't need to turn off your system when you're using these. All right, you need to go into your BIOS and make sure that your BIOS is set up to read first from wherever you're putting the hot swappable. So if you're putting it into your DVD bay in your BIOS, you need to go set it up for it to go look for in the DVD first. If you're using a flash drive, then in your BIOS you need to set it up. You need to set up your BIOS to go look at the flash drive first, so it can get that information it needs for the installation. Okay, and then one probably the most common that we use is called the internal hard drive, which is a partition. So if you guys have installed Windows before, you probably use this method. And basically, what you're doing is you're saving a copy of your image on the hard drive itself, right? And the files are placed there during the installation, and they'll contain a original image of the original installation. So instead of having to go and get something else, if you need to do a clean install or a repair install, you basically go into that partition part of your hard drive, and you can reinstall it from there, or you can recover it from there. Also, you need to it is set up in your BIOS for when your system starts up. This partition needs to be the first place that your system goes to get the operating system for. Okay.
So you need to change the boot sequence from the BIOS.
So yes, so boot sequence is very important, right? Because if you have two hard drives, you need to make sure that the drive where the operating system is in first is the first bootable drive. So yeah, Babacar. Was that your question?
Yeah, it wasn't a question. I was just trying to add something on top of it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I answered. I spoke to it correctly.
No, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
yeah.
The one that's going to be booting is going to be the one on top, and then the rest in the bottom.
Exactly. Yes. Because when you set up your boot order, your first selection should always be the thing that has the OS in it, right? Because otherwise, how you're gonna run your system? You need to be able to load the OS first.
Right.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so these are some files that you need to be aware of. All right, so your boot files are the boot mgr or boot manager, bcd, winload.exe, your nt kernel.exe, and your winresume. So be very careful with these whenever you're doing work on them. If you see these files, be very careful about terminating them or deleting them. Okay. And then your system files are on the right, and also be very careful with these files as well. Okay, and we're going to talk a little bit more about these later on in the cohort for some of these. Okay, so now we're talking about repair installations. So can anyone take a guess as why we would do a repair installation? Can anyone give me an example? Why you think you might do one? Yeah, go ahead.
Either like bugs or like I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say bugs or like being
Your
infected.
Your
Right,
OS
so
isn't
that's-
running properly?
Your OS isn't running properly. That's another good one. You might have had a virus and you're trying to recover from. Nassim, you had your hand up, Nassim?
I was going to say the boot files are corrupted somehow.
Your
and
boot
therefore-
files may be corrupted and you need to get a free you need to put in a new image or old image depending on how you're going to do your recovery. So those are all great answers, guys. So so when we're doing our installation, we'll set up a recovery partition, and there could be two. There could be one that is a factory reset that is going to set it to the image that you got from the original factory settings. Is pretty much just going to be like bare bones, whatever it came with at first. There's not going to be any customization on that. That's what we call the factory reset. And then, or you could have an internal recovery partition, which is where you make a partition on your hard drive that is specifically designed to be used as a recovery tool, right? And if you're diligent about it, you could probably be doing these maybe every month, depending on how far back you're willing to risk if something goes bad, right? Like in my personal life, I do them every 4 months, right? So I do them 3 times a year. And basically, like right now, the last time I did it was back in August. So if I need to, like, if something goes terribly wrong, I can go to my image that I had from August and recover my windows from that day. And then then we also have reset windows, and this is a complete refresh versus a reset. I'm actually not familiar with that term. Kelly, are you still there for this?
He said he had to go, but he'll be right back.
No problem. This might be one of the new ones. Sorry. We'll come back for reset because I'm not 100% sure on that. Have you heard of that one, Francis?
I have, but I mean, it's very similar to just doing the installer, the recovery where you keep your files.
Okay.
I think it's very similar. I don't know why it's like separate.
It might be that it doesn't do the entire installation again. It might just be that it like reloads them in. I'm not sure.
I've done that before.
Wait, is it
It's system restore.
No, system restore is a whole.
I know what you're thinking. The thing is that it restores the system to a previous state,
right?
But it removes the files as well. I remember my computer wasn't running correctly, so I had to reset everything, but I didn't want to have to uninstall. So what I did was I refreshed and it uninstalled a lot of my programs, and I had to go back and make sure like it had I looked it up and it has a little folder on my desktop that says removed apps, and you would go through and see which ones that you actually want to install back and stuff like that.
All right.
It
yeah.
keeps
All right. Thank you.
All your personal files though. So anything that stays within like your user stuff and things like that they don't.
So those things are deleted, you're saying?
Only apps and I would say stuff that isn't personal files.
So your program files do get deleted, but
yeah, your program files are deleted,
files.
but you get a folder that shows you which ones were deleted.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. I appreciate your guys' assistance with that.
I knew breaking my computer was gonna come in handy for this class. Don't worry.
It always does.
Yes,
all right.
sir.
So thank you guys for that. And then when Kelly comes back, I'll make sure to ask him about that as well, just so we can have a full picture of it. But thank you, Adriel, and thank you, Francis. Okay, so here are some of the decisions that we need to make when we're installing. So you need to be wary of the size for the partition that you're using, right? You need to also take into account your administrating account settings, meaning do you want do you want this this account to have full administrator access, or do you want them to have restricted some restrictions? And those will vary depending on your company policy, and B, like Kelly said before, on what or for who you're making the installations for. So if you're doing it for an accounting, they might have different settings than then HR and finance might have something different. So you need to take those into account. Then you also need to do the network configuration so they can have access to your networks, both internally and whether or not they're even allowed to access public networks, like if they're allowed to go online or stuff like that. Because in some environments, there'll be certain computers or certain people that you don't want them to be able to have connections to outside networks, right? Because they're going over extremely private things. It might be research and development, things like that. So you want to make sure that they only have the appropriate network configured. And then you have to, if you're doing an upgrade or if you're going to a different version, you need to choose what you want to migrate. And migrate means what you want to bring along, right? So the user state migration tool, this allows for large scale automated deployments to transfer user settings. So this is what you would use in a large corporate environment when you have multiple, a lot of workstations to consider. And then for smaller deployments like home or small office, you would use something called Windows Easy Transfer. And it's essentially the same thing, but it's more efficient because you're dealing with less numbers, right? And what they both do is that they capture the images before the upgrade or the install, and then they're deployed after the process is completed. So it saves all those settings for you, right? Then the process goes through, and then it's reinserted afterwards. So that way, when the process is completed, all those settings that you had beforehand, they're there after as well. Okay, and it says here that it could also be used when upgrading your computer systems. So do we have any questions about the decisions that we're making during our installation? Or is this kind of straightforward? Steven looks like he's gonna go right into his monitor. What's up?
The biggest issues that I'm having right now is probably trying to figure out what
situation. All right, give me 1 second, Adrian. Hold on. My bad. Got so much noise pollution.
Oh, you heard they want to make people pay for making noise, like truck drivers and stuff in the city?
They want to, they've always had those noise things, but yeah. They're trying to get crazier with it. Also with the construction as well. Yeah. All right. What were you saying, Adriel? I'm sorry. What were you having issues with?
I don't know if I speak for anybody else, but I think I'm finding an issue with trying to think about what each situation would call for. I know it's on a case-to-case basis, but just being able to hypothetically think of situations where I would need to use different tools or different types of installs and stuff like that. I guess because it's the first time I'm hearing about this stuff. That's why.
Well, so if you're doing like if you're working in an office that you need to go from Windows 8.1 to 10 for 20 computers, you'll probably use the USMT, the user state migration tool. But at the same time, let's say in that same office, you have a small work group that about 5 computers that needs to go up to Windows 11. You might just use Windows Easy Transfer. It just depends on the number, the number of images that you need to deploy, and basically that between those two different tools, that's what it comes down to, is how large, how large your number of systems that you're dealing with. But if you're doing something on a more personal note, or if you're like if you have your own repair shop and you're doing it one customer at a time, then yeah, you would definitely use Windows Easy Transfer. You know what I mean?
All
So,
right.
so yeah. And the other things that we talked about here, like the size of the partition, the administrative account settings, that also is on a case by case basis, right? You do need to be able to realize, hey, I'm doing personal repairs, right? So yeah, this person it's their computer. They do need administrative settings, right? They do need those kind of things, and yeah, and also the same thing happens with with the size of the partition. Like you don't want to waste space. You want to make sure that you have what you need for that Windows partition.
No problem. I think Crystal had her hand up.
Okay, what's up, Crystal?
No, I was just going to say that in my experience, as far as Adriel, when you were referencing how you were having a hard time coming up with an example where you would use this, I can only speak from my professional experience, which has been like, as far as having to reset the computer, sometimes when you're constantly working on things or constantly like downloading things from the World Wide Web, you can get a corrupt file that can like just mess up your computer in all kinds of ways. And the only way to get the computer back to functioning is to reset it. Is that what you were referring to?
Yeah, and then DW had talked about like depending on the amount of systems you're installing on, which tool to use, and there's stuff like that. Yeah, that helps a lot actually.
Yeah, because
I understand.
I was doing work as a desktop publisher. I would go out to the web and download graphics a lot because I don't know how to create graphics. And so I would download corrupt files or things of that nature, you know, because anything that's free is an issue. So I messed up my machine more than once. And that's when I use SharePoint a lot. So I was just trying to give you an example of where you would use it in a professional setting.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Crystal. I saw that Nassim had his hand up. What's up, Nassim? And then we'll go to Kayla.
So let me understand the USMT. What it does is just transferring the user settings. The rest of the installation is
so it'll have these specific account settings. So administrative settings and network settings, right? And
anything else besides that? Anything else like your files and your folders? What happens to them?
No, I think we use a different tool, and we'll get into that for the files.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Kayla.
He just asked what I was thinking about, so yeah.
All right, no worries. All right, let's see what else we got here. Okay, so ignore 7 and 8. We don't have to know these. So yeah, so these were things that we had to. I mean, if you want to know it for your personal life, right? And there might be situations where you want to know this, but it used to be that you have to have a certain edition. Like if you have Windows 7 Home, you can't upgrade to Windows Enterprise, right? And if you have Windows 8 Home, you can't upgrade to Windows 10 Enterprise. So these are called upgrade paths, but they have gone away from this. But I see Kelly still included this in the slide. So you know, like I was saying, this is like optional material if you want to study this.
Well, the main takeaway is you can either go over or improve the version. Like,
yeah,
so
you can't.
If you start out with a basic, you can go to a pro or an enterprise, but you can't go down. So like you can't start at enterprise and go down to basic. So you can only go over or up. You can't go down. That's the main takeaway with upgrade paths. But they do have systems that'll tell you what you can upgrade to as well.
Yes. You have another question, Crystal?
I do. I am wondering, because Microsoft Office is so expensive, and I don't want to use anything other than Microsoft Office. When I finally get my home PC set up, do you guys think that I'll be able to install like Windows 7 and not have to purchase Windows 11, so that I don't have to pay the annual fee and still be able and still be operational? Because I do a lot of 1099 work nowadays. Things have changed for me. So
when you get your KBCC email, you might be able to get a student discount version.
oh, okay. All right.
You might be able to use it for free actually if you have a KBCC.
I noticed now that they're like, remember the first time, Kelly, you talked about how it's an annual subscription now for Microsoft Office instead versus when you used to just pay for it. Now they're
Yeah, they
forcing.
nuked my old one and I had to get the subscription.
Right. So I'm trying to avoid, I'm just thinking cost effectively. The annual subscription might be expensive. So, so anyway, that's all I was asking. If I could download an older version of Microsoft Office so
Yeah,
that I wouldn't
technically.
have to pay the annual
But
subscription.
again, like DW was saying, you may be able to get it through free through CUNY.
If you have a QD email, it is 100% free. Online, yeah. I use it every day. All right, Kelly, well, I got you here. The reset Windows. I'm drawing a blank on that. Can you just go over resetting the Windows versus the recovery?
Well, it's kind of like a factory reset, like you would do on your phone.
So okay, because Adriel gave us an example where he had to use a reset Windows and he lost his program files, but he was able to keep his personal files.
Yes.
Okay.
So it'd be like a factory reset on your phone where you still manage to keep your apps and stuff like that, but you're kind of refreshing all the settings and all that stuff back to when you originally started. The program files and the dynamic link library files or whatever are all reset. So it resets all the settings to when it was redone.
But because up if you see above from the recovery partition, we have the factory reset. So it's pretty much that. It's the same.
Well, I mean, okay, so factory reset. I mean,
it's the manufacturers.
They're using it here would be like nuking everything King method.
Like gone, everything.
Yeah.
Even files.
And then you have the reset version, which kind of resets all the settings back to where they were supposed to be, but you still keep your files and applications.
Okay, thank you. All right, so if we use the factory reset, we lose our files, pictures, all that stuff, right? You're pretty much putting your system back to the way it got shipped to you out of factory settings, right? And then when if we're using the reset Windows, we're resetting the Windows files, but not our personal data.
That's my understanding of it, yes.
All right. And then Nassim had a question for, sorry, I got ahead here. When we use the user state migration tool or the Windows Easy Transfer, this is just for the settings, right? This doesn't migrate our personal files.
Yeah, the MT it does. It migrate your file folders.
Yeah, it does.
And and the settings and everything.
Yeah.
So you get everything comes through the.
It brings you to the newer version, but it transfers up all your settings and files and everything.
Okay.
Great. Makes it easier to move up to the newer version.
And there was one more, but I don't see it on the in the slides. Another thing similar to Windows Easy Transfer, was it Windows Upgrade as well?
Is it the Windows Deployment Service, the MDS?
No, I think Windows Deployment Service is for the network ones, right? For the Pixie environment.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Okay, so did that answer your question, Nassim? You had it earlier. So the USMT and the Windows Easy Transfer will allow for your files to be transferred as well, Nassim, if you're still there.
Okay, yeah, I'm here. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the question, by the way.
You're welcome, thanks.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
After you upgrading this to a newer version, do you still able to reset to the factory level?
After you upgrade to a new version, can you repeat the last part of your question? I didn't get the last part.
Can you reset back to the factory level?
So when you if you upgrade to a new version and you're doing a clean install, you're getting rid of the old operating system, right? So you're getting rid of that partition usually. So you'll have a new factory partition almost. You have a new recovery partition.
Okay.
You understand? Because unless you're doing something specific where you're keeping that data in your partition, that you're keeping that image, which I don't. It might be very odd for you to do that. Yeah, typically you're getting rid of that system entirely, and you're creating a new partition for your operating system and a new recovery partition. So now what happens is, like, you're running that OS, and if you run into issues 6 months down the road, you don't have to go back to your previous version to factory reset. You just do your reset from that version now. Does that make sense? Amia?
Okay.
It's like, let me see if I can say it better. Like, if you went from Windows 10, right, to Windows 11, and you've been using Windows 11 for a year, and you have an issue, and you need to do a factory reset, you're not going to factory reset to Windows 10. You're going to factory reset to Windows 11.
Okay.
All right?
Yes, thank you.
All right, so now we're going to talk about the steps for performing a clean installation. I'm just going to ask for a little help here. Anyone want to read the first 2 steps?
Yeah, I can read it.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Don.
Okay. If no OS is installed on PC, load the bootable media, disk, external drive, or USB following the prompts. If OS is already installed on the PC, everything on the hard drive will be erased and replaced with a new clean version of Windows, unless a dual boot choice is made. This will place 2 operating systems on the same computer, and the user will need to choose one OS or the other, so BIOS will know which OS to load.
All right, go ahead and read the last one while you still.
Yeah, sure. Installing a 64-bit OS when a 32-bit OS is already installed can only be accomplished first if the actual system architecture allows it. This must be a clean install and never an in-place upgrade.
All right, awesome. Thank you. So we touched on a couple of points here, right? If you have no OS on the PC, then you have to load the bootable media first, right? I talked about this earlier, the disk or the external drive, the USB, and you got to follow those prompts, right? If the OS is already on there, if it's already on the PC, what happens next is that everything on the hard drive is going to be erased and replaced with the new version of what you're installing, right? Remember, we're installing here. This is not an upgrade. This is installing, which means we're putting a whole new OS in there. We're not upgrading. All right, and then so if you want to keep 2 operating systems, you're going to be doing dual boot, and at this point, you need to go into your BIOS and configure which of the operating systems you want the OS to load first. Okay, and then if you're installing 64 bits onto a system that has a 32-bit OS, first you need to make sure that your hardware is capable of running it and that you have the minimum requirements for it, right? And then you have to do a clean install, because you can never do an upgrade in that situation because the architectures are completely different. Okay. You have any questions here, guys?
So what would be the benefits of having 2 OSs at the same time? Like, I'm kind of confused about that.
You might have a system in which you have software that only runs in Windows 8, right? Or Windows 10, but you don't want to always use Windows 8, right? You only want to use it when you need to do your work that requires that. That's one way. That's one. I guess one situation. Other situations, you might have multiple users using one system, right? But those users need different things, right? So depending on the user that's logging in, they have a whole different image on that system. We have that in school. We have Windows 11, Windows 10, and the first thing that when I turn it on, the first thing that asks me for is which operating system I want to load. If I know that I need to be working for Windows 10, then I'll load in Windows 10. If I know I'm working on Windows 11, I'll load that. If I need Linux, I load in Linux. So those are the different, those are situations where you could see that happening.
All right, thank you guys. I really appreciate the explanations, both from DW and everyone else in the text. So thanks.
Oh, awesome. I don't even have the chat up. You guys could be talking about me and I wouldn't even know.
So when it says
it's okay.
everything on the hard drive will be erased and replaced, is
It's
that only
erased and
talking
then
about,
replaced.
is that
Go ahead.
talking about the old OS and just the files regarding to the OS? Like, will it leave your other files or
No.
applications installed?
Everything.
Everything.
So it's everything.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's why it's called
Clean install or
clean
custom install. Everything is gone.
Okay.
It makes a copy of it first.
Gotcha.
Kelly, I have a question. Kelly, are you there? I have a question.
Yeah, I'm here.
So I'm a little bit confused. Can you repeat the part where you said something about resetting to a factory and then some stuff get lost? I'm a little bit confused. Like, is there a way to back up your stuff before you lose them or something like that?
Yeah, you would hopefully do a backup before you would do a reinstall or reset or something like that anyway. But if you're just doing a reset, it should reset all the files, like the DLL files, all the Windows core files and all that stuff back to their original factory settings. And, because if somebody came in there and changed that stuff, it can corrupt the system and make it so it doesn't function properly. So doing a reset would go back and put it back to the way it's supposed to be. And then, but it would still allow you to keep your applications and files.
So I have a question. So if you use the backup function, right? So it's somewhere in the cloud. So I'm sitting outside. Hope you can hear me. And then you use the backup, and then it's somewhere in the cloud, right? But the reason you're doing the reset in the first place is that there's a bug, right? And you're trying to clean that bug. So if you back up your like your apps, are you not backing up that bug with it? I'm trying to understand how it works right
Depending on the type of malware, yeah, that's a possibility.
Like, what's the best way? Because it's like when you back it up, you're backing up with the virus. And then if you just reset it, you're gonna lose some products, right?
Essentially what you would do is you would, I kind of had to do this because of what my son did on my network over the, a couple weekends ago. You have to go through a malware process where you essentially quarantine the system, don't allow it network access, you upload a current malware, cleaner on it, and then you get all the malware off the system, and then you can kind of get a backup from there and then reset. So, but if it still has network access, it's going to be very difficult a lot of times to get rid of a lot of malware because it's basically phoning home or using information you get from the network to kind of thwart your efforts to get rid of it. There are some malware that's really, really bad and you have no option but to nuke everything and everything is lost, which is why you need to do regular backups.
Yep. But don't worry, we'll get to malware in a week or two.
Yep.
I'm a little bit worried, DW, because I actually lost lost or had to throw away my what is it, laptop. It was an old version Dell, and I had that same problem. So that's why I'm trying to understand how it works. Because when I turned it off, the screen was like black. There was nothing on it. So when I took it to the factory, they said, "Oh, you were supposed to back up some stuff." So I'm thinking you back it up and you back up the thing as well, the virus as well.
You do.
So okay, I'm just gonna pay attention, and because I had this problem, so I'm just gonna pay attention.
Yeah. Again, we'll go over like how to remove malware, but yeah, a big key to not losing everything. And I'm just gonna give you guys this before we get there is having backups. So if you're able to back up things and you have them in a separate device, like let's say you have a bootable, like a flash drive where you do backups every month or something like that, and then you get a bad virus or something goes wrong with your system this month, yeah, you'll lose everything from here to when you back it up, but you won't lose 2 or 3 years or 4 years or whatever amount of time you have on your computer at that time, because there are nasty things there that the only way to get rid of it is to just delete everything, right? And then do a whole clean installation after that. But you don't want to lose all your data. So having backups is probably what they were trying to tell you, like, oh, we need your backups in order to get the things back to you. But there are like some really bad situations where you're gonna have to, like Kelly said, nuke your system, pretty much just delete everything you have on there. Yeah, what's up, Don?
So say if you were upgrading your OS, like say from like a really old OS to a new one, is there any situation where if you put your backup files on the new OS, they wouldn't be compatible because they were originally made on the old OS?
Yeah, I think there might be definitely some situations like that. Like if you have something that was made in a application that ran Vista and you're just trying to bring that file over to Windows 11, yeah, you're going to run into issues. Okay. That's why when Kayla asked me what are situations where you have dual systems, right? That's one perfect situation, because that app or that program may not have support in newer systems. So yeah, it won't run in something newer.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. All right. So we went over the clean installation steps. Now it's okay. You guys have a question here. So go ahead and yeah, Nassim, you have a question?
Yeah, on the subject that was touched before by Dan.
Yeah.
As you said, there's some programs might not work on the more recent operating system, but there is a function in Windows that allows you to go backwards with compatibility. I think
there is one, and we have a section on it coming up. Yes, there is. Do you remember the tool for it, Nassim? Do you know it?
It's when you go in properties and over there you could assign it to work with Windows 95, I think.
Yeah,
I haven't used it much, but I remember seeing it.
There is a tool there, and it works pretty well. But there are some instances where you still do need the entire operating system,
right?
Depending on how niche and like how a specific program was built, you might still need the operating system completely.
I just want to add something else that like images or audio or files that media files, even text files from previous operating system, they should work on the new ones because it's a standard.
Yes, so JPEG. Like TXT, JPEG, MP3s, those should work. Yeah, right. Throughout. Yes. Yeah. I was kind of touching base on like
programs.
Programs, yeah, because in a lot of different companies, you'll be running specific software for whatever that company is, and it might have been developed for a specific version of Windows or a specific version of Ubuntu or whatever the case is.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the name of that applet, Kelly, that allows us to do the backwards thing? Is it Windows?
What, Windows?
Yeah, the window. There's a window, like a thing that lets you run older things. Windows compatibility. What is it?
Yeah, there's the XP compatibility app. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I didn't know that it went all the way back to 95 though. I thought it was XP was like the oldest one.
Yeah, I thought XP was the main one, because you could run things in XP mode.
There you go, running XP. Yeah, so here we go. We got Windows compatibility, XP compatibility. Yeah. So that's one. So the name of the applet is compatibility mode, Nassim.
All right. It's when you click on the right click on the program, it shows you different tabs. One of them is compatibility, and there you can set it for previous operating system compatibility mode.
can also prompt you sometimes depending on the program, which is, do you want to run this in compatibility mode?
It does, yeah, it'll ask you that too. I've seen that happen. All right, let's go over these questions that we just had. So can you okay. So can you upgrade from a Windows 7 Home 64-bit to a Windows Home 64-bit? The answer to this is no. We didn't go over this, but for Windows 7, oh, actually, this was yes.
Yeah, I believe you
This
can
was yes.
on 64.
Yeah,
Seven to
you
ten,
can-
yes.
I was
If it
about to
Vista,
say-
no.
yeah, it was Vista that you got to upgrade to Windows 7 first.
Yeah, you have to go to
yeah.
7 or 8 and then to
10.
You couldn't jump straight from Vista.
Right. Thankfully, you guys don't need to know that anymore for the test anyway. Okay, so after you've done your installation, these are the things that we want to look for afterwards, right? So first, you want to load any third-party drivers. Then you want to set your time, date, region, languages, right? Then you go back into driver installation, software, and any Windows updates. Because you installed that new version, but you still might have new packs that need to be installed as well, and we call those updates. Okay. After that, you got to make sure that your boot drive has been properly formatted. Verify that you have access to the networks that you want to have access to, and then you have to activate Windows. Does anyone knows what activating Windows is?
Put in that authentication key that you get.
Finding an authentication key basically lets Microsoft know that you paid for Windows and that you are requesting for like service from them, like making sure that you get the updates and all those kind of things. Yeah, Amiha, you have a question, sir?
Yes. If I install 2 operating system in one PC,
yes,
can I access data from one window from the other window from the other operating system, or
if you're running double instances, yeah, but it depends. It depends because if you just have two images and you're booting one at a time, then no, right? Because you have to go back. You need to go back into that. But if you're running multiple instances at the same time, when you're so basically you're running a virtual machine, then yeah, you can go in between the two. So it depends on how you're running your systems.
Can you repeat me? For I didn't understand the virtual machine in the PC. You are muted.
DW, you're muted.
I don't know how that happened. Sorry. Okay, so I'm gonna give you the example that I gave earlier with my computer labs.
Yeah.
Right, in my computer labs, there are about 10, 12 different operating systems. When I load one from the boot, when I go into boot and I load one, I cannot access the other ones. Right, I'm loading one operating system at a time. Now, that being said, if you have a computer that you have set up to do virtualization, then you can run multiple systems at the same time, right? But if you don't have it set up that way and you're just pulling the Windows version that you want to work on at one moment, then you're stuck working with that one Windows system. So it depends on how you have it installed. That's what I was trying to tell you.
May I attempt to explain?
Yeah, please. I encourage it.
So when you have a boot drive, or the way it's booted, think of it as a front door. You knock on the front door and you ask for a specific person. So the specific person could be the operating system. You knock on the front door, you say, I'd like to boot into Windows. You then turn your computer off, you turn it back on, you knock on the front door, I want to boot into Mac. Now, if you wanted to say not load it that way, you would knock on the front door, it automatically boots into your chosen operating system, be it Windows, and then for a virtual machine, you need a program for that operating system to run inside. So think of almost like you wanted to play a video. You use a program to play that video. You will use a program to play that operating system, if that's a good explanation.
Yeah, thank you, Francis. Yeah. Okay, so we'll talk more about those things a little later on too, Amiha. So don't think this is the only time we'll talk about it. What's up, Crystal?
I don't know.
Chip Block.
Listen.
What's up? What's up? I'm sorry. I had to one time.
Chip
One time a day.
Chip set.
Oh, nah.
Right.
I was on the train. Yes. Listen. I'm sorry. I was on the train yesterday waiting for like 30 minutes. All right. And there's like 1,000 people on the platform, and somebody just has a loud ass speaker, and they come in playing Jadakiss.
Yes.
We are D Block.
Yeah.
Mighty
D Block. Okay. DW,
I'm not gonna lie, that
focused.
made me so much fun. Yeah,
Stay focused, DW. Okay. So this question is for DW, Francis, and everybody else who knows the answer to this. Okay. I get confused about, I might be off subject. You could tell me if I am, but like, what if you have Windows Defender? Is that the built-in default antivirus for Microsoft Office? Do you still need to download why do you still need to download an antivirus if Windows Defender is already comes with the whole operating system?
You
don't need to.
All right, so don't run multiple antiviruses. That is
right,
a sure.
Because it slows down the system, right? DW.
Yeah, that's a sure way to eat up all your RAM and thrash your hard drives. Right. So don't run multiple antivirus systems. That being said, the Microsoft one is a basic one. You're kind of like putting all your trust in Microsoft at that point. You might want to have something more robust, or you might not like Microsoft. You might like something else, right? So, but Microsoft does provide basic protection against certain things, and you can set firewalls and stuff like that. So yeah, Windows Defender is the basic anti-malware, not just antivirus, but anti-malware.
All right, so when you go to the store, and you go to the store today, you go to Best Buy, you buy a brand new PC. It has a full Microsoft Office operating system gamut on it. You do not need to also download. A separate antivirus, anti-malware. Is that correct?
You don't need to do that. No, you don't need to do that. You have.
That's what I thought.
You have Windows Defender. But again, remember when you're going out and buying a thick client, see how I'm merging the sections here for you?
I like that.
When you go out and you buy a thick client at Best Buy or whatever, they'll have preloaded things on there. So you might have Windows Defender, and then there might be a thing that's like, hey, because you bought this computer, here's 60 free days of McAfee free.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it depends. And which I would recommend you doing is if you're going to run a separate anti-malware thing, is go into your Windows Defender and just make sure that you're not also running the anti-malware on there at the same time. So that way you're not competing for those valuable resources, because then you're going to be doing someone's 1099s and it's going to crash and you're going to be upset.
Right. Okay.
And it's not even that something is wrong with your system. It's just that the resources are
too much going on. Right. And the other thing is that, I'm sorry to bring up old stuff, y'all, my bad. However, remember when you were talking about a virtual machine, you still have to have, you said that Citrix does not count as a virtual machine, right? But it is a virtual program, right?
All right, now you're getting a little bit off topic. We'll come back to virtual machines later on. Yes.
Thanks. Appreciate
no worries. I'm sorry about that.
We will talk about VMs a little bit more, and we'll get into that one a little bit later.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Let's get past installing Windows. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we got up to making sure that you have network access and activating Windows. You want to install your updates and your service packs, right? Then you want to go into your settings and configure your automatic updates. You might want to switch those to off. Why would we want to switch them to off? Anyone have an idea why you want to switch your automatic updates to off? All right, I see your hand, Crystal. I'm trying to see if anyone else wants, but go ahead. It doesn't look like anyone else wants to answer. So go ahead, Crystal.
So my thoughts on this are that you don't want to do automatic updates for programs that you don't use on a regular basis. So for me, on my cell phone, for example, I don't install automatic updates for the fitness app because I don't have time for fitness in my life right now. So that is why I said that. And you don't want to take up extra RAM that's not necessary. You know what I mean? So like, why update it if you don't use the Weather Channel service? Then don't update it.
I like that. I never thought about that in that way. So that's actually pretty cool. Thank you for sharing that. And so that's a good example for like your phone, right? Yeah, why are you updating apps you're never going to use? First of all, why you got that app if you're not using it? That's number one. But then when we're talking about our operating system, when you have automatic updates, those updates usually have bugs in them at first, right? So you might have something, you might have a little bug that completely wrecks things that you're working with in your company. So usually what is recommended is that you allow these service packs to kind of like do their circle around the room pretty much. Just so you give them like a month or two, and you could set this. You could set it to, hey, I want to install the updates 2 months after they're released, right? And you can actually go ahead and set these. And those are just like industry kind of tidbits, right? Like you don't always want to be the first one to go and get the update, because it might be that thing is an update that is not suitable to your company right now as well. So that's why we kind of like hold off on the instant updates right away. Would you agree with that, Francis, or do you go and update as much as you can right away?
No. I wait a little bit and see what blogs come out, who finds this and that, and then I update. I don't wait too long, but I do wait, especially because here it depends. Like with my Exchange server, I just automatically update because I'm hosting on premises, which is a nightmare in itself. So that's always updated immediately, just because of all the vulnerabilities. But as far as like cell phones and computers, I wait at least 2 weeks to see what's coming out.
Yeah, I'm talking about specifically for like the operating systems specifically.
Yeah,
so
the
like
operating systems I wait. It's usually like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like service packs you would wait. But like a hot fix for security issue instantly gets pushed through, I would imagine.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Thank you. And then after that, you want to, so we just talked about configuring your automatic updates. You want to install any hardware, install your applications. And then last, you want to set up your user accounts and transfer user data. And then you want to turn specific features on and off for that image. Okay. So I would definitely either write these down or take a quick snapshot of this so you can have this for future reference. So I'll give you guys about 10 seconds to do that now. Do we have any questions about things that we do after installation? Or is this pretty much straightforward? Yeah, you guys with the virtual backgrounds, sometimes y'all lean back and it seems like y'all disappeared. And then I see your nose and then I see your eyes. And I'm like, oh, they're there.
Invisibility cloak activated.
I'm definitely talking about Adriel and Cynthia. All right. What's up? Aminata, I haven't heard from you today. How you doing today?
I have a question. So what about the automatic, like for the iPhones? Like it's automatic when you have to do the softwares. Is that safe?
It's not automatic. You can set it'll give you a push through, right? It'll be like, hey, there's an update coming out tonight, or please plug in your phone or hit a step and have your phone plugged into the power. So it's not automatic. You can hold off on that. It doesn't have to be automatic. It is, for the most part, they're safe. It's just that sometimes things are buggy. I mean, I thought so. If iOS, I forget which one we're up to now. Maybe 12. Is it iOS 12 that we're up to?
Yeah.
Or something like that. If iOS 12 came out today, there might be a bug tomorrow where it doesn't allow you to use your pictures. So I personally, and I know a lot of people also, tend to hold off just a little bit, just so that way you're not like one of the first people dealing with these issues that might arise. But if you're like into that kind of things and you like working through the bugs and giving feedback to the manufacturers because that's how they fix things, user feedback, then that works for you. That's cool.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. All right, we're almost getting there, guys. All right, so upgrade paths. So Windows Upgrade OS Advisor. So this is a tool that that if you're planning to do an upgrade, all right, you can open this tool up and it'll. This was in Windows Vista, so this is old. But basically, you open up this tool and you're like, "Hey, I plan on upgrading to Windows 10," and it'll go through a checklist and it'll tell you like which what you can upgrade to. All right, this is it's pretty straightforward. So basically, it'll let you know if there's any compatibility issues with hardware or other things and how to resolve them, or give you recommendations for your proposed upgrade. All right, and it it was first seen in Vista, but you can go and download it off the Microsoft website for any Microsoft operating system. You still have another question, Aminata? All right, cool. All right. All right, so this is a different tool, and this is called Windows Anytime Upgrade. Okay, and this one is this the one where, Kelly, can you help me out with the Anytime Upgrade tool? If you're there. You're muted if you're talking.
With the Anytime Upgrade?
Yeah.
Is that basically you go in and you can use the tool there to basically look at your computer and see if you have the capabilities to upgrade to the newest version, I believe. Yes, Francis.
Nope, yeah, you said it, and it was popularized because they were offering your Windows 7 key to transfer to 8 and then 10 and such.
And they gave away 10 for free for like a year for upgrade, if I remember correctly.
So the upgrade, so the Windows Upgrade Advisor lets you know how, if you can do it, and gives you recommendations on how to achieve that upgrade. And then the upgrade, Anytime Upgrade, is basically you go in here and it'll actually let you download
kind of another
Windows
version
7.
of the same thing.
No, but this is, you said that this one's actually letting you upgrade to Windows 7 and giving you a key. The other one wasn't doing that.
No. This one basically tests your system, lets you know if you can do the upgrades.
Oh, okay.
So it's basically another name for the same thing, because as we are all well aware of, especially at this point, Windows changes the names of things pretty regularly and likes to move where they're located on a pretty regular basis from update to update. So this is kind of a version of that.
Yeah, and Windows, they discontinued this service. They don't offer it anymore.
Yeah, I think they stopped it in 8, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So this is obsolete, is what you're saying there.
We refer to that as legacy.
Nah, because legacy are used sometimes, but if it's just not, it's like
if you have Windows 7, you may still use it.
Yeah, I just about to say I used that because I had a key for 7, so I had to upgrade to 8, and from 8 to 10. So that's how I did it.
George had Windows 7. I got a Windows 7 too. I'm not ecstatic about it, George.
It was free, so I did it.
It wasn't free. I bought it 10 years ago. It was free because I found it again. I was like, oh, I got this still. It's like when you find money. It's like you didn't find money. It was your money the whole time. It's just that
that's the best part about winter, when you start putting your heavy coats back on. You're reaching like, hey, $20.
Yo, one time I found so much money in all my hoodies. It was insane. I was so happy. All right, troubleshooting the installation process. So the installation process itself almost never fails, but something else during it is usually what happens, and we call this an install failure. And some of the common ones are media error, so that you have a scratched DVD, and you use Windex to clean it, like I did. You might have a driver issue with your hard drives, so your RAID is not detected. The boot device isn't present, which can mean that either you have a bad disk or that you are looking in the wrong drive, right, in the boot order. So your boot order, you need to double check that. And then you can have a hardware detection error, which is you got to make sure that you have the appropriate hardware for the installation that you're trying to perform. If you're trying to install a 64-bit operating system and you have 32-bit hardware, then you're gonna get this error, right? Because you're not installing with the proper hardware. And then lockups. So this pretty much means that your installation froze up during the install process. And what you would do is you unplug the PC, so you remove the power, plug it back in, turn it back on, and then you boot into the setup and the installation, and then it'll automatically restart the installation for you. And if you're wondering, hey, how can I practice this? Guess what? Who could tell me where you can practice it? Kayla knows where to practice it. Why don't you tell them, Kayla? Yeah, Test Out Lab. You can practice it. Test Out. You can practice all these things in Test Out. So you can practice a clean install. You can practice a Pixie install. You can practice an error where something is going bad. Yeah, so all these things you can have fun with.
And you realize they're not as scary as you thought they were.
Yeah, not necessarily. All right, so this is the requirements for Windows 10. This is another screenshot. You guys went over this yesterday. And there's the difference between 32-bit and 64-bit. Okay, you do need to know this. You need to know this. The difference between 32-bit and 64-bit requirements for Windows 10. Absolutely must know. All right, so I'll give you another 10 seconds to screenshot this in case you had not already. Okay. So OS requirements for applications. Application for OS compatibility. So you got to make sure that whatever app you're running is compatible with that Windows version that you're running. If you have a app that runs, we spoke about this a little bit earlier, but you have a app that runs Windows 7 and you've got Windows 11, it's not going to run. Or chances are it's not going to run. Same thing if you got I don't know. You would think not, but this happens. People will have a Mac, right? They'll have a Mac and you'll get a call and they'll be like, hey, I'm trying to get such and such application to work and it's not working. It was working on my old laptop. Why is it not working now? And then you're like, okay, what's the application? And then they'll tell you, oh, it's this. And then you go, what was your old thing? And they'll be like, oh, it was Microsoft. It was Windows. And then you're like, what are you running now? It's Mac. And then that's probably why it's not running. You would think it doesn't happen, but it does, is what I'm trying to say. Same thing with your Linux distributions, depending on the different distro that you're using for Linux, you got to make sure that the application is compatible with that. And then by the same token, if your application needs 32-bit architecture to run, if it needs 64-bit architecture to run, you're not going to be able to run it on a 32-bit operating system, right? So you need to make sure that you have the appropriate OS and architecture to run that app. Some of these terms sound complicated, but once you understand the very basics of it, it becomes a lot easier. Like the 64-bit and the 32-bit. It's something that we discussed earlier, right? And it's the two different type of architectures. So 64-bit applications, 32-bit applications can be run on 64-bit OSs, but 64-bit applications cannot be run on 32-bit, right? So if you have an application that's 32-bit, you can run it on 64, right? But it can't be the other way. Are we clear about that? And when you go to download these applications, they'll usually have different versions of it, right? And they'll even have tools that'll look up, that'll go and check what you're running, and they'll download the appropriate version for your system. So they can be pretty simple. Do we have any questions about this?
So just I just want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly. So say if I have a 68-bit program, I could run a 32-bit program on it, but I can't do that vice versa. Is that basically what
All right, you're asking about this, Henry. I will go over it again. So if you have a 32-bit program, but you have a 64-bit operating system, you can run that. You're able to run that. But if you have a 32-bit operating system, you will not be able to run 64-bit programs on it. Yes? All right, cool. All right. All right, so these are things that you have to consider. Your licensing and compliance. You got to make sure that you have the appropriate licenses for the tools that you're going to use. Francis, you probably know all about this. So you know when you don't be the person that gets your company in trouble because you tried to skip out on some licenses. Like the company is supposed to pay for these things. There's a budget for it, right? So don't be that guy or gal, please. All right, then user training and education. Like if you're rolling out new Windows, a new version of operating system, and you know that your users have been using the previous one for years, and there's significant changes, you should probably be rolling out some kind of user training, either manuals or some little in small groups. You know, these are things you need to consider, and also you need to consider your support requirements, right? Like, oh, we need to be more attentive to this, or maybe less attentive. But these are just things that you need to keep in mind when you're going through different installations and upgrades. Then you need to also keep in mind the impact to operation, right? How is this new operating system going to impact our operations, our support tools, and when to deploy them? So if you know that your goal by the end of this quarter is to have all your system upgraded to the newest Windows, right? Then you need to go ahead and set a schedule where you're doing it. And you usually want to do this during downtimes, right? You don't want to do this during regular working hours, because then you're disrupting people's work days, right? And usually also you're going to do it by section, right? Because in case something goes bad, it's a lot easier to roll back. And let's say you have 500 PCs and you do all 500 of them. If something goes bad in that one image, guess what? Something went bad for 500 of them, right? So you would do it out in sections. You would probably roll out like 50 at a time or something like that. And you would do it over a set amount of time, and you plan effectively. And then this makes it easier to work with bugs or if something goes wrong, being able to roll back. All right. And then the last things that you want to consider are your impacts to your devices and to your network. Make sure that the resource consumption or the use of background services is acceptable. Risks of your faulty applications, and also your bandwidth usage. You want to make sure that you're not overclocking the network when you're doing these things. Okay. Do we have any questions about our considerations here? Kind of makes sense, right? These are things that we want to keep in the back of our head when we're doing our installations and our upgrades. All right. So with that, let's revisit our objectives. So we should be able to tell the difference between installing or upgrading an operating system. So how about Ian? Can you tell me, Ian, what's the difference between installing and upgrading? Good morning to you, Ian.
Hello.
Oh, you muted yourself again, brother.
Sorry, I'm still trying to give you the answer. I kind of spaced out a bit.
Oh, it's okay. You give it a shot, and if you don't feel comfortable, I'll ask somebody else. No worries. So I'm asking you, what do you think the difference is between an install and an upgrade?
An install and an upgrade.
Yes.
So I would say the difference between an install and upgrade is like one would be a new product versus the other being like something better, right? So you're
Okay.
kind of like improving upon the
Right.
system.
Okay. Awesome. That's pretty good. You're hitting on the door. I would expand on it by saying that when you're installing, you're putting a new kind of like a new operating system in there. Like you're putting it's brand new. When you're upgrading, you're going from something that you had already to either to a newer version. So yeah, you're right on the money there. Yes. So and then we also call those clean install versus upgrade, right? So you're going and doing a clean install, meaning you're installing all the Windows files, all those things, as opposed to just transferring your information up to a newer version and upgrading that way. But yeah, thank you, Ian. I appreciate that. All right, then we should be able to describe the difference between attended and unattended installations. And okay, how about Madison? You want to take a crack at this one? The difference between attended and unattended installations?
From my understanding, the attended installation is when you're physically there, like answering all of the questions.
Yes, that's perfectly good. That's a great answer. And then what are we unattended?
Unattended, you are not physically doing it, but you've probably created like a file.
Right. Oh man, you're right there. Yeah. So that's perfect. What was the name of that file? Do you remember?
The file. I probably wrote it down somewhere. No.
What are you? So you got questions, and what are you doing for the questions? What are you doing to the questions?
Answering it.
Yeah. So it's called the answer file.
Oh, so easy. Thank you.
There you go. So yeah, perfect. That was great. So yeah, so the difference between the attended is that you're going through the prompts and the questions, right? And unattended, you've set up an image, right? And then you're pushing that image through, and those answers are stored in a file called the answer file. So I relearned it new today because I had forgotten about it in Kelly before we came in this morning. I was like, dude, what's this slide talking about answer file? I don't get it. And he's like, yeah, it's just that file that keeps all your answers to the questions. So yeah.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, sometimes it's just that easy.
Sometimes, right? Because I was like, yo, I don't remember this. And he's like, dude, yes, you do. It's literally where the answers get stored. That's it. Stop overthinking it. I was like, oh, okay. There you go. All right. So then name the key steps to install Windows, including the different ways to begin the process. All right. Who can give me a couple of the ways that we can install Windows? You guys want me to call?
You need to verify first if that account is yours or something like that, right? You got to make sure you have the key.
Okay, that's one of the things that we do. Yes, when we're installing Windows, that's part of our installing process. What should you do before you're installing? What is the first thing you need to do? Go ahead, Steven.
Requirements. Check
Okay.
requirements.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
All right, cool. So you guys tag team that's the first thing, right? So you gotta check your requirements. You also gotta make sure you have the correct version of Windows. Like we said earlier, if you're running a processor that supports 32-bit architecture, please do not try to install a 64-bit Windows operating system in it. It is not gonna go well. You're gonna be upset. All right, so make sure that those things are right. Make sure you have the minimum requirements, right? What's the minimum amount of RAM for Windows 10 for a 32-bit operating system?
1 gigabyte.
1 gigabyte. All right, what about for a 64-bit operating system?
2
gigabytes.
2 gigabytes. All right, what about hard drive? What's the minimum amount of hard drive space for a 64-bit Windows 10 installation?
20.
20 gigabytes.
Okay, what about for the 32-bit installation?
16.
10.
16. All right. Cool. And then processor?
1 gigahertz.
1 gigahertz. All right. Awesome. Okay. What are the different ways that I can begin the process?
You have to decide which media to use.
Yeah, you can decide one media. Give me one specific, Nisim. Give me one.
Like a USB drive. And
Okay,
then you have to go in the BIOS and tell the BIOS that you want to read first the USB drive in order to start the process.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's one way. What if I want to do multiple systems at once? What's a way I can do that?
Is it the Pixie?
Pixie, PXE, yes, that's a good thing. Yeah, you can do that. What's another way? We have USB. We have a Pixie install. What else?
A CD.
You got a CD, DVD. Yeah. All right. Yeah, these are all pretty good. All right. Let's identify common pitfalls that can occur when installing Windows and how to solve them. What happens if I'm making an install and my system just freezes up? What do I do?
Turn off the PC and then restart it and let the operating system reinstall itself.
Right. So you go back in, you go into the boot, whatever you're booting it from, go back in, and it should automatically start repairing that and doing it again. What about if I have a messed up DVD? What are my options? What do you think of my options are? I don't think I talked about that.
Get another one.
Get another one. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Call them. Be like, hey man, I got a valid key, but my media is damaged. Can you guys send me another one? Usually that they probably will. I remember that happened to me long time ago with Windows Vista, I think, and I was like, hey, my CD is messed up, but my key is still valid. Called Microsoft and they sent me a new one. It took like 3 weeks to get to me because shipping isn't what it is today. But yeah.
But nowadays you can download it.
Yes, if you have another system, yeah, you can download it probably. Right. All right, and then we didn't talk about the upgrade requirements for Windows 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. Well, we did. Basically, that you need to know if you have Windows 7 Premium. If you have Windows 7 Home, you can't go to Windows 8 Premium. You got to be at the same thing, at the same level, right? You can't go backwards. Is that what we said, Kelly?
I mean, you can go over or up. You can't go down. Typically.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have
you can only
Windows
go
Home,
up so high. Like you can't go to like
Enterprise. Like if you have Windows 7 Home, you can't go to Windows 7 Enterprise.
No, you just have to start.
And if you have Windows 7 Premium, you can't go back to Windows 8 Home. That's pretty much what you're saying?
Yeah, correct.
Right.
That's because of the license or because of
because for money, for things like that, for licensing. Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like I mean, like some of the other things like the Enterprise or the Education editions, they are built. They have like stronger features, stronger architecture and stuff like that. So you're able to do more with them, and that's why they won't allow you to go back. And why your previous operating system needs like a stepping stool almost to get to them. But again, those are things that are not required for the new test. But it's good to know anyway. All right. Do we have any questions before I turn it over back to Kelly? Anything that didn't sit right with us? Anything that you'd like a little bit more clarity on?
Yeah, I need a little clarity about downgrading Windows, like from Windows 10, 11 to 10.
Downgrading. You want to roll back?
Like,
what do you mean?
Roll back, yeah, like going from like a higher version to a lower one. You can do it.
Yeah, but you can a clean install.
Yeah, it's not so exactly. It's like what Kelly was saying earlier. So yeah, so you would have a clean install means that we're taking away whatever it was Windows 11. So you make a backup first, right? So you back up the files that you want, right? You have your backup, and then basically what you're doing is you're getting rid of the operating system and installing a new version, which is the old version, right? And then you're doing it like that. But yeah, that's how you would do it. So that's why
you cannot just do it through the settings, like just downgrading, roll it back. You cannot do that.
No, you're not gonna be able to do that. That's why
you have to uninstall it completely and then reinstall the older version.
So that's why when I was giving the example of like doing in an environment where you're doing a lot of these, where you're doing 100 of them, you don't want to do all 100 at a time, right? You do 10, right? And then you have your backups for the things as you go along. So you back up those 10 systems. All right, you push your upgrade through. If everything is working great, it's fine. If it's not, what happens is that because you have your backups, you go back and you do a clean install for the previous version that you had, and then you could just upload all your settings and files back from your backup. And then when you're ready at a later date to push the upgrade again, you go back and do it. But yeah, so definitely in a professional environment, always backing up is a big thing of performing both upgrades and installs. I don't think I harped on that as much as I should have, actually.
Nobody ever thinks about backups until they lose their data the first time.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, DJ.
You're welcome, man. Did that give you a better understanding of it?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Anyone else, guys? What's up, Nassim?
I just want to say that my experience, a clean reinstall is better than upgrading, because my experience when I went from Windows 8 to 8.1, everything was okay. When I went from 8.1 to 10, I had many issues until I decided to install it from clean install, and then everything went okay. Everything was working properly. I don't know if it was my case or generally speaking, maybe.
There may be cases like that, yeah, for sure. Sometimes also what happens is when you're doing a clean install, all the files are like you're deleting everything else. So it might be something on your system that's not working properly. So because you're doing a clean install, remember you're deleting the old operating system and putting in a new one. So now you're putting in all the brand new files, and maybe that's why you had better success doing it that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Kelly, it's all yours, sir.